So, I played Avowed. And no, I didn't get a free code. Yes, I dropped around 80 bucks, close to 90 on this thing. Now that's a hefty sum. And after spending about 10 hours with the game, I feel like it could have been better spent on literally anything else. Honestly, I could have donated that money to a random cause, like buying an industrial-sized barrel of ranch dressing. At least I know I was contributing to something. But hey, that's the price we pay for hope, right? For a game that promises to deliver something different, something special. But here I am, left with a bitter aftertaste, and let me tell you, Avowed did things to me in those 10 hours that I haven't felt since Veilguard, and that's never a good sign. Before you hit me with the "how can you review a game you haven't finished" spiel, spare me. This is exactly why we're stuck in an era of half-baked, safe, and utterly forgettable games. Let's be real, you don't have to suffer through an entire game to know it's not worth your time. I have never been run over by a car, but I can confidently say I wouldn't enjoy it. Similarly, I don't need to grind through the next 30 hours of Avowed to know it's not the RPG salvation we were promised. Now let's be clear about one thing. Avowed is better than Veilguard, but that's not exactly a ringing endorsement. I mean, it's like saying AIDS is better than cancer. It's not a flex, it's just a sad comparison. And yet, that's what some reviews are doing. Trying to dress up Avowed as some kind of masterpiece by putting it side by side with the absolute dumpster fire that was Veilguard. That's not how we measure quality, folks. You need to compare it to other games in the same genre, or better yet, to its spiritual predecessor, Pillars of Eternity. And that's where things start to unravel. Let's talk gameplay. Avowed aims to be a first-person RPG, hoping to compete with the likes of Skyrim, which is a bold move considering Skyrim is an institution by now. The problem is, it tries to be this dynamic, fast-paced, engaging action RPG, and it completely falls flat. The combat is a half-hearted attempt at blending Dying Light and Skyrim, and it's clear that neither side was fully realized. And let's talk about the AI. Avowed somehow managed to create enemies that are both too stupid and too fast. These guys will lose track of you the moment you break line of sight. I mean, I get it. It's hard to focus when you're stuck in a game that feels like it's running on dial-up internet, but come on. The enemy AI is just so bad you can stand still and they will forget you exist. Meanwhile, your companions are basically just glorified speed bumps. They will drop in seconds, you will be left doing all the heavy lifting, and let's not forget the impeccable skill at completely ignoring the actual enemy to go fight some random thing that wasn't even in combat. It's like the companion AI went to the school of Dumb and Dumber, except without the laughs. And then there's the combat itself. It's just a loop of dodging, spamming left click, and hoping the enemy dies before you do. But even when you do stumble upon a spell or ability that actually makes combat easier, the satisfaction is fleeting because guess what? The enemies never get more interested. They are bullet sponges. They don't get tougher, they just get more annoying. And if you crank up the difficulty, all that happens is they hit harder and you hit softer. It's like someone thought difficulty equals making everything tedious as hell. That's not hard, it's just a chore. Now the story, the thing I care about most in RPGs, the thing that can elevate a game from mediocre to unforgettable. I have played 10 hours and I couldn't even tell you what the main plot is. If you put a gun to my head and ask me to explain it, I'd probably mumble something about being the chosen one and saving the world from a plague. But honestly, I'm sure even that's not right. The story is a bland mess filled with generic tropes and endless fetch quests. People know you're on this world-shaking journey, but they will still stop you to ask you to go fetch a land deed or search a food wagon. Really, this is the urgency the game is selling. What really gets me is how Avowed doesn't trust its players to know anything. The game constantly reminds you about basic mechanics and lore. Seriously, this game has more hand-holding than a kindergarten class field trip. Companions will repeat the same information 50 times in a 5-minute span. Hey, did you know the city is full of plague? No, I didn't know. Thanks for the millionth reminder. But that's not all. They will also point out things on the map before you even had a chance to see them, robbing you of any sense of discovery. And God forbid you explore on your own. No, the game's gonna point you to every important thing like you are an infant learning about the world. Forget exploring or piecing things together. Avowed just gives you a checklist of things to do and how to do them. Yeah.
I hate to think it reaches all the way down here.
Can I?
The sound of violence, essence twisted out of shape.
This is the goddamn problem of hand-holding, correct? Listen. I am trying to loot. I'm trying to, I'm very low level. I'm trying to find like things to like loot. Like maybe like I can discover some better gear, whatever. And they're already talking about something that I'm not even looking at. I'm looking this way, and they're talking about the dream scourge that I wasn't even looking at. The role-playing aspect is where Avowed really falls apart. I don't understand how a studio can slap RPG on their game and then treat role-playing like an afterthought. Your dialogue options are mostly the same thing in different flavors. Nothing meaningful, nothing that makes you feel like you're shaping the world around you. Sure, you'll get a few ability check options that actually feel significant, but those are rare. It's like the game gives you one solid choice and then expects you to be grateful for it. The rest is just fluff. The writing is so modern, so millennial, that it completely takes you out of any immersion the game could have offered. It's like they took a Reddit thread, shoved it in the game, and called it a day. Choosing dialogue is like walking into a buffet of meh and picking the least stale option. Every interaction feels like the game is asking, do you want to be the edgy choice, the nice choice, or the super boring one? If you have played any RPG in the last decade, you have seen it all before. Except Avowed somehow makes it worse. Exploration in Avowed is frankly a joke. The game doesn't want you to sneak around at night or pick locks. No. The only way to get into places is by parkouring around medieval scaffolding and finding weak points in the wall. That's your reward for exploration, a shiny backpack or some other trivial item. There's no environmental storytelling, no sense of discovery, just get on a roof and you're good to go. It's like they took every stealth game mechanic and flushed it down the toilet. Honestly, at some point I just gave up and started looking for the nearest rooftop. Climbing is about as exciting as watching paint dry, but hey, at least it's easier than pretending Avowed cares about its environmental design. So, after all is said and done, what is Avowed really? Well, it's a game that just feels like it's constantly trying to punch above its weight, but sadly just can't deliver. It is a project that wants to be a contender in the RPG space, to stand toe-to-toe with classics like Skyrim and Oblivion, but instead it feels like it's still in the developmental stages, not quite ready for the big leagues. It's not that it doesn't have potential, there are moments where you think, hey, this could have been something, but those moments are buried under a mountain of uninspired mechanics, awkward combat, and a story so generic that it makes Velgard look like The Witcher 3 in comparison. Let's be real for a second. The RPG genre is packed to the brim with games that know what they want to be, and they execute it brilliantly. Baldur's Gate 3, Divinity Original Sin 2, Pillars of Eternity. These games have set a standard and they do it with passion, with soul. Avowed, however, feels more like an RPG by committee. It's as if a group of execs sat down and said, hey, people like Skyrim, people like The Elder Scrolls, people like Pillars of Eternity, let's just mix them all together, add some magic and throw it out there. But here's the thing, mixing random ingredients doesn't always create a masterpiece. Sometimes it just creates a mess, and that's what Avowed is, a mess. Sure, the visuals look nice in some places, the world feels big, and the idea of being the chosen one in a plague-ridden world has potential. But when you dig deeper, the cracks start to show. The combat doesn't have any weight or excitement to it. The world feels hollow, devoid of the kind of narrative depth that Pillars of Eternity managed to create. Exploration is an afterthought, reduced to rooftop parkour and random fetch quest. And don't even get me started on the dialogue. It's like they went out of their way to make every line sound as modern and cringy as possible, completely shattering any hope of immersion. At the end of the day, Avowed doesn't feel like a game that respects the player's time or intelligence. It's not the kind of game you'd sink hours into, getting lost in the world and its characters. Instead, it's a game that you'll likely put down after a few hours, scratching your head and asking, what am I doing here? The kind of game that leaves you feeling more frustrated than fulfilled, more bored than engaged. So, if you're someone who's looking for a game that offers a true RPG experience, one that challenges you, excites you, and makes you care about the world you're in, you're better off looking elsewhere. There are plenty of other titles out there that actually deliver on the promise of being immersive, engaging, and worthy of your time and money. Avowed just doesn't make the cut. If I had to summarize Avowed in a single sentence, it would be this. It's a game that tries to be many things but ends up being nothing at all. It's the equivalent of ordering a fancy dish at a restaurant only to find out it's just a plate of microwave leftovers. Sure, it looks fine on the surface, but it doesn't satisfy your hunger for something memorable. And that, my friends, is the biggest disappointment of all. It's a forgettable, lifeless, and frustrating experience that you will likely forget as soon as you turn it off. So if you're still on the fence about picking it up, just ask yourself this. Are you really ready for another empty adventure, or are you looking for something with a little more meat on its bones? For my final rating, I'm giving Avowed a Fable 3 out of Dragon Age Origins. It is a birthday cake that looks amazing on the outside, but is hollow and disappointing on the inside. A little bit of fun at first, but once the frosting is gone, you're left with nothing of substance. And that's really the problem with Avowed, it's just a hollow shell of an RPG. One that could have been great, but didn't live up to its potential. If you've got $80 burning a hole in your pocket, there are better ways to spend it. Like on a solid meal, or hey, even a game that respects your time. But if you do decide to play Avowed, good luck. I'll be over here playing anything else.